Means we'll travel.
B for Life Fitness.
We are in Newfoundland, Canada right now, and it is the summer of 2025. And we are on a road trip this morning going to St. Anthony, a northern tip of Newfoundland. We are going to check out Viking village. So L'anse Aux Meadows is where we're headed. We're going to stay at Hotel North for a couple of nights. I'm going to go to L'anse Aux Meadows. Tonight there's a storytelling, so we're going to try to get some footage of that. And there's a few other stops along the way, so we're going to see what we can find to show you and share with you. So stay tuned. And we made it. It took us about 7 hours of driving, and here we are in St. Anthony. We decided that we would check out the L'anse Aux Meadows site and take in some of the history. And here are a few photos that we're going to share with you. And then I did get to videotape a historical movie while we were there that they were playing. And I thought I would share that with you today. I've decided to make this a two-part series as we did get a lot of footage and I don't want to miss sharing any of it with you. I didn't want to miss sharing the storytelling or the boat building or the tour of the housing or any of the other things. I really hope you enjoyed this video, part 1, and that you'll tune back in next week for the remainder of the footage, part 2. Now let's get started with that historical movie.
Before Columbus landed in North America, they came. But they were not alone. Fascinated with Vikings? Is it their bad boy image of being Europe's marauders and pillagers? Or is it their distinctive boats whose fierce dragon prows sent chills into their victims' hearts? Or is it the epic tales of their legendary seamanship as they explored the vast regions of the North and became the first known Europeans to set foot on North American soil that makes them so appealing? Whatever the reason, the Vikings for centuries, and they continue to do so. Why did the Vikings come? And why here? Now, let me right away clear up a common misconception about the Vikings. Scandinavian men only became Vikings when they went raiding, and women could never be Vikings. Men and women from Scandinavia were simply known as Norse people. Obviously, it doesn't sound quite as colorful as Vikings, and that's why the word is so often misused. Now, even though the Norse put up stakes in Newfoundland 1,000 years ago, our story really begins sometime before that. A long time before that. Across the North Atlantic, as you might expect, but in Africa. Modern humans evolved in Africa approximately 200,000 to 150,000 years ago. A small group left Africa and began to spread out around the world 100,000 years ago. Heading north, some turned left and others went right. They reached North America over 14,000 years ago, crossing by land and by sea. Over thousands and thousands of years, the descendants of these early African travelers populated the earth. Now, many Aboriginal people in North America would counter that they had been here since the dawn of time. By around the year 1000, the world had almost been completely encircled by humankind. But the vastness of the Atlantic Ocean separated the final connection between East and West. This was about to change with the development of Norse sailing ships during the Viking Age in the 9th century. Technically advanced ships allowed the Norse to sail the open ocean. Now, there were two main types, one for warfare and the other for trading. All Norse vessels were constructed of thin, overlapping hardwood planks. The planks were fastened together with iron boat nails and sealed with wool dipped in tar. The Norse sailed these strong and nimble ships with shallow drafts to Europe, Russia, and the Middle East, and westward to Iceland and Greenland, establishing new trade routes and settlements along the way. Just imagine what it would have been like 1,000 years ago being part of Leif Erikson's expedition from Greenland as they searched for much needed resources such as timber and iron that Greenland did not provide. According to the Norse sagas, the first landmass Leif sighted was a great slab of rock, which he named Helluland, meaning land of flat stones. Next, he came upon a place that was wooded, with white sandy beaches that seemed to stretch on forever. It was so striking that Leif named it Furthestrandir, meaning wonder beaches, and Markland, meaning land of forests, which we know as Labrador today. Then onward he sailed to the area that today we know as L'anse Aux Meadows. After walking the lush shores of a place he himself called Wonder Beaches, sounds like a theme resort in the Caribbean, doesn't it? And having trees as far as the eye could see, why would the son of Eric the Red choose to land here in this barren spit of land in the northwest tip of Newfoundland? What was he thinking? He chose this site for a number of reasons. Now, you have to remember that 1,000 years ago, the climate was warmer, and the barrens you see here had many more trees that the Norse used for their houses and ship repair. But more than likely, the number one reason that Leif chose this site was location, location, location. As you can see, with Great Sacred Island and Little Sacred Island in the background, and Belle Isle and Labrador in the distance, it was a strategic spot that the Norse arriving from Greenland could easily find over and over again, since they navigated by landmarks. There is no archaeological evidence or written saga accounts that the Norse ever encountered Aboriginal peoples at L'anse Aux Meadows. But there is evidence of Aboriginal people visiting this site as far as 5,000 years ago, and up to and after the Norse arrival. Generations of Aboriginal people visited this site for hunting and wood gathering, leaving behind traces of tent rings and fire pits, like this one. Now, the Norse would have known that they were not the first to occupy this land. They might have wondered who were the people who came before them, how many were there, and whether or not they would return. Earlier settlements in Iceland and Greenland, L'anse Aux Meadows was never to be a permanent settlement. It was a base camp, a gateway for expeditions into what the Norse sagas referred to as Vinland, the land of wine. And here lies the mystery. Where exactly was Vinland? Even though the climate was warmer 1,000 years ago, wild grapes never grew at L'anse Aux Meadows, or even close to it. But they did grow in New Brunswick. And butternuts, too. You'll find out why this is important later on. What does all this tell us? It tells us three things. One, that the Norse were exploring for resources that were not readily available in Greenland. Two, that Vinland included regions much further than just their L'anse Aux Meadows base camp. And three, during their excursions north into Markland and further south into Vinland, they were bound to meet up with the locals. The meaning of this encounter was obviously lost on both cultures. For the Aboriginal peoples and for the Norse themselves, this was an opportunity to do what both groups greatly valued, a chance to do a little trading. The Norse were interested in trading for furs, while the Aboriginal people desired the Norse's iron weapons, which they would not trade. But instead, according to the sagas, they offered such items as red cloth and milk.
L'anse Aux Meadows is rippling gold in the sunset. Northward, Belle-Île looms like a fairy castle. Farther off, day dims along the Labrador shore, where the Vinland voyagers came coasting south. Think of the courage of those Norsemen setting out to sea in open boats, driven by their lust for adventure and by the need to find good new land where families could settle and live.
Norwegian adventurer and writer Helge Ingstad wrote these poetic words during the excavation of L'anse Aux Meadows in the early 1960s. You might say that he was driven with proving that the Norse were the first Europeans to land in North America. Sifting through the clues left behind in the Norse sagas and talking to anyone that might steer him in the right direction, Ingstad's quest brought him to L'anse Aux Meadows in 1960. Here, a resident fisherman, George Decker, led him to what locals called the Old Indian Camp. When Ingstad first saw these overgrown impressions where the halls, houses, and huts once stood, he knew in his heart that the Norse had been here. As you can see, the base camp was much larger than the several recreated buildings on site. Together with his archaeologist wife, Anna Stina, Helge Ingstad rewrote history and brought worldwide attention to the tiny, isolated fishing village of L'anse Aux Meadows. The Ingstad's excavation of the site lasted for a period of 7 years. During the 4th year, Swedish dig member Brigida Wallace and a young American boy, Tony Beardsley, who just happened to be visiting his dad at the site, uncovered an artifact that proved the Norse were indeed here.
And I said, oh my God.
A spindle whorl. Then, the discovery of one intact iron boat nail and a bronze ring-headed pin that Norsemen used to fasten their cloaks all served as undisputable evidence that Norse people were here. In the mid-1970s, Parks Canada continued the historic dig that now famous Ingstad so passionately had begun. The park's dig lasted for 4 more years. It extended beyond the building's foundations. And here, into the bog, among the unrelenting thick swarms of black flies and mosquitoes. And remember those New Brunswick butternuts? 3 of those were found in the bog, along with a burl of butternut wood. And what does that suggest? That the Norse sailed far south of here. So, we know that the Norse were here, but surprisingly, for less than a decade. Why did they leave? Well, truth is, we don't know for sure. The sagas give the distinct impression that relations with the Aboriginal people, who greatly outnumbered them, soured. Also, around this time, it seemed that the Vinland expeditions were just too demanding on the fledgling colony of Greenland. As trade developed with Europe, and goods such as northern walrus were being exchanged for wood, the L'anse Aux Meadows base no longer made economic sense, and it was abandoned. And they were not going to leave anything behind for others to use. World Heritage Sites, such as L'anse Aux Meadows, belong to all of us. They are irreplaceable landmarks of humanity's journey. The short time the Norse were here symbolizes the completion of human migration around the world. By crossing the Atlantic to North America and encountering Aboriginal people, the Norse completed the circle begun when humans first left Africa 100,000 years ago. Their historic impact, preserved here for 1,000 years, represents a fascinating chapter in the ongoing tale of human beings' desire to explore and migrate to the outer reaches of our planet and beyond.
And that's a wrap for L'anse Aux Meadows Part 1. Hope you come back next week when we share with you some history, some storytelling. We go on a tour of the house. We even get to have some toutons.